Hi, this recording is going to go over Unit 6 in the third grade Math plus Purple. And as you can see, it's a rather long unit and it covers algebraic thinking and expressions as well as number patterns. And what this unit is going to do is really help students apply some of the things they learned in the multiplication and division units as well as some of the addition and subtraction units and apply it into different situations. So let's head over to the student activity book, and remember you can open up this side tab and go straight to the algebraic thinking. And the first thing that you're going to see is a little bit about expressions, and we want students to know that when they see a statement such as Rosa has 3 tickets, she buys 5 more, that we're representing an addition sentence. And when it says Rosa had 8 tickets, she gave 3 away, we're representing a subtraction sentence. We can also turn that same type of thing into a multiplication sentence. Rosa has 3 tickets. Maria has twice as many. So we have 2 times 3, or division. Rosa has 12 tickets. She puts them in 3 equal groups so that she divides them out. The one thing that we do want to stay away from is just telling students to find key words. And I think I've mentioned this in some of the other unit recordings, and I'll include a link about that as well in this newsletter. When we encourage students to look only for a key word, they think that they must do something with those numbers and automatically find an answer without really making sense of the problem. And so some keywords can also be used in multiple things. They may be adding, they may be multiplying, and those same keywords can be used. So we want students to make sense of the problem and not just look for numbers and one word to get the answer. And I'll also include a link to a video called How Old is the Shepherd? Because you'll see that even 8th graders that don't understand word problems can end up doing some really crazy things when they just look at something and look for numbers and feel like they have to get an answer. So definitely check out the How Old is the Shepherd video that is included in the Coach's Corner newsletter. There's tons of practice of making sense and knowing which sign to use. And then as you continue to go through, the students get to put in some words to make it match that expression on the ticket. So excellent, excellent practice. As we continue to go through the unit, they're going to have more examples of which sign would you use. Are we talking about addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division? And it just gives the students that chance to reinforce that knowledge, like I said, that it was in the previous chapters and units. Right now, they're going to have the words, but then they're going to write it out. So 7 more than 15. We would have, what sign would we use with those numbers? We have 15 plus 7, or 7 more than 15. 10 times 4 would be 4 multiplied by 10. As we go through, we have expressions you can see in lots of different units and lessons. It says match each expression with the one on the right. And I think this activity really focuses on that equal. What we want students, when they see that equal sign, it means the same as. So the amount is going to be the same as. A lot of times students think of, okay, here's a problem, and the equal sign means I'm going to spit out an answer. But what we want students to think of is a balance. That equal sign means the equation is balanced and it's the same on both sides. So you can see that 6 minus 1 is going to be 5, and that 5 is going to balance D, which is 0 plus 5. They may look very, very different, but they will be the same on each side. And this is going to really help your student become an algebraic thinker, especially before they head into middle school. Having success in algebra doesn't start in middle school, it starts in early elementary. Next, we're going to get into some expressions with a little bit larger number, but we want students, like I said, to really understand what is happening in the real world problem so that they will know how to solve that real world problem. So here we have Candy Apple Cafe. sells candy apples at the carnival. On Sunday, 120 candy apples were sold. On Saturday, 60 candy apples were sold. How many candy apples in all were sold on those 2 days? So we know that we need to add those amounts together to get the total amount. And even though the total comes first, we want to encourage students to see that it means the same thing. This amount is going to be the same as this amount. There's also equations here that are multiple step where you add and then possibly subtract, or you subtract and then subtract again. So let's look at this one. The clowns are putting on a show at the carnival. There are 50 people watching the show. Before the show is over, 12 people leave and 9 people arrive. How many people are watching the show now? So think about before the show, there's 50 people, then 12 leave, and then 9 more arrive. So it's a two-step problem, and we want students, especially when they are adding and subtracting like this, to always go from left to right and do what comes first when adding and subtracting. As they get older and there's two steps that include multiplication and division, they'll also usually have that order of operations that has the parentheses, and they'll need to know what to do in the correct order of operations. Now we're going to get into more comparisons, and so it's not just the equal sign that means the same as. We're going to talk about, is it less than, greater than, or equal to, the same as. So is 40, it is greater or less than 32 plus 42, because we would have, 32 plus 10, which would be 42. 40 is less than 42. We don't want to just teach students the little tricks of the alligator opens up his mouth. We want them to really understand less than and greater than. Here we have an equation. So is this equation or expression on this side the same as, greater than, or equal to the expression on this side? Now we're going to write expressions to represent the story problems. Bob has 12 tickets and he uses 8 of them. So this unit is very appropriate, very applicable to real world situations. We want them to continue to mix those symbols. It kind of combines everything that's been taught so far: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. If your child hasn't mastered their math facts, that's okay. We want them to know how to apply those facts, and so continue to work on fact fluency. We're still practicing the comparison symbols, and then we're going to head into missing symbols and more complex problems. Let's take a look at this one. It says write a number sentence to compare the quantities in the situation. Each of the 3 Drake children visit the jump house 6 times. Violet visits the jump house 13 times. So we are going to write a comparison to see which one happens the most. 3 Drakes, each goes 6 times, so 3 times 6 is greater than 13. So the Drake children visit the house more times than Violet does. Again, there's lots and lots of practice in making sentences true. I'm going to go ahead and skip down, because as you go through these missing values and comparing, you'll see even where there's 2 missing values, but they want you to fill in the numbers from the word problem into the situation. And then you're going to get into number patterns. And with number patterns, what's important for students to realize, and I'm going to show you this with the document camera, we have 4, 8, 12, and 16. So if I have 4, 8, 12, and 16, we definitely want students to write this on their paper and to think about the difference between those numbers. How does a 4 become an 8? How does an 8 become a 12? Now, they might think, oh, if I multiply 4 times 2, that becomes 8, so the pattern must be times 2. But does that same pattern work here? Does 8 times 2 equal 16? And you'll see, no, it does not. So we need to think about what pattern you would have over and over that would work every single time. We have 4 and 4 more, it becomes 8. 8 and 4 more becomes 12. 12 and 4 more becomes 16. So they need to make sure they don't just try it out on the first two digits. They need to try it out on all of the subsequent numbers as well. So the pattern is add 4. Now this is a skill that is going to lay a foundation for fourth grade and as well as middle school. So they need to think about, some of them go up and some of these patterns go down. So sometimes they're going to add, sometimes they're going to subtract. We are going to go into multiplication patterns as well throughout this unit. So sometimes they will have a pattern that they will multiply by 2 or another number over and over and over. There's also going to be an emphasis, I'm going to go back here, about even and odd. And what we want students to realize is not just the trick of that an even number always ends with 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and an odd number always ends with 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. We really want students to understand that odd means that there's something left out, and we think about those multiplication arrays. There are great videos in LearnZillion that even go down to second grade where this skill was introduced that talk about odd and even numbers. So I'm going to get out my document camera here for a second. Again, we don't want students just to look and say, oh, that's even because there's a 2. We want students to understand what even is, because let me draw a picture here. We have 9, 10, 11, 12. Students can see, okay, we have equal groups and we have an array. But what if, let me think of a way that I could draw this a little bit differently. I'm going to have my 12 look like this. And so they may say, oh no, that doesn't work because there's 2 down here, so 12 must not be equal. But we always need to think of and encourage them to find partners. As long as there are partners, just like as we had here, we could always group it by 2s. If things can be grouped by 2s, then they definitely are an even number. What if I had 15? There's 3 rows of 5. They may think, oh, well, that's even. But then when they look at it and say, does everything have a partner? You can see, uh-oh, there's 1 left over. So they do not all have a partner. It can't be equally divided by 2. And that's what we want them to think about when they see even and odd numbers. Can it be evenly divided into groups of 2? There are more practice with number patterns. Here we have 23, 26, 29, and I can see that we're adding by 3. Here we're going 13 to 25 to 37. So that's not a pattern that's really easy to think about. So let me turn the document camera on, and we have 13, 25, 37, 49. 13, 25, 37, 49. So those are rather unique. So again, we want students to really think about what is the difference between these numbers, and is it the same every single time? If we count up to 25, I know I can go a whole group of 10, and that would be 23, and then 2 more. So that would be 12. Let's think about that number sense. 25 plus 10 more would be 35. And then 2 more, so that again would be 12. 37 to 47 would be a group of 10, and then 2 more would be 12. So our pattern is add 12 every single time. And as you can see, what I did was I didn't just count up 13, 14, 15, like count by ones. I really encouraged that number sense and say, okay, we've got to find the difference. So let's use our knowledge of tens and skip counting. So 13 to 23 would be counting up by tens, and then I have 2 more. So in your daily conversations, really gets to encourage your student to think about those relationships that numbers have and that number sense when solving problems. The great thing about this unit is it also talks about and encourages students to use a table. And so here we have week 1 and we have 5 miles. Week 2 is 10, and you can see this, the pattern is multiplying by 5. So as we have our pattern, we can see that each time it increases 5 times. A table is a great thing for your student to learn how to use early in elementary school because it is something that they will see throughout the rest of their educational careers, and it's a great way to organize information. So when they're trying to explain their thinking, to build a table like this is a great model to use on their scratch paper. And they can see the input output. We're going to add 7 and then subtract 1. So you can see we added 7 but took 1 away, so that means the same as really adding 6. So instead of trying to do 2 steps, we can consolidate and say, well, basically we're going to add 6 every single time. Here we're going to multiply by 2. 8 times 2 is 16. 10 times 2 would be, so we have our input output. A great story that I'll also include in the newsletter that you can check out from your local library is called Two of Everything, and it's about a family that throws things into a pot. And so they may throw in 2 carrots, but they get out 4 carrots. So everything doubles, and so they have a different output than they have for their input. So it's a great story to read that would correlate well to this unit. As we go through, they're going to continue to work on that multiplication patterns and tables, and then you're going to get to the core focus. And the core focus repeats and reiterates some of the things that were already in this unit, where we fill in the missing numbers to solve the equation. And we also really want students to understand unknown values. That a variable could be any letter, it could be even about all of these are variables. We have 2 unknown values and an unknown value, so we're going to plug in what we know to answer and solve the problem. When we incorporate that this variable or unknown does represent a number, we just don't know what it is, so we're going to fill in these other numbers to find that unknown number so that our equation is balanced or equal on both sides and be the same as on both sides. Now at the end of this unit, you will have an extended problem solving and reasoning. So when you go to the lesson guide, you can go down to resources and you can go to algebraic thinking unit and then go to the extended problem solving. Remember, you can open this up and you can also see the answer key. There are also some fun input-output tables that you can print out here, as well as some centimeter grid paper. And remember that as you go through the units, the lesson guide walks you through step by step with additional hints and tips as a learning coach. I'm not going to go through all of those now because they are resources that you have. This unit is important because it gets students, like I said, to think about what they've already learned. There's a combination of online and offline activities, so make sure when your student does have these offline activities that you are sitting with them and working with them so that they understand what these activities mean. This unit will take a little over or about 3 weeks to complete, or a little more than that, because it does have 17 lessons, but each of them are applicable and very suitable to 3rd grade standards. So I hope this helps, and I also will, before I head out, will show you some other sites that can be beneficial as you go through helping your student be a good mathematician. The Greg Tang math site does have books and games, but you can also go here to this materials tab and go to worksheets as well as laminates and puzzles and games. And when you go to this, you can scroll down to some practice about multiplication and division. But what I also like is that there are opportunities for them to model the math and find missing add-ins, just like we were talking about earlier. You can also explore Khan Academy in addition to Learn Zillion that we've shared. There are new and updated lessons for elementary school, and here it talks about the commutative property where order doesn't matter, and other properties of multiplication such as grouping like we've done, as well as some math patterns and patterns on the multiplication table. So definitely don't forget about the Khan Academy. I hope this has been beneficial, and next we'll head into geometry and the end of the semester.